And I think, again, as you've shared, like far too often, we as women haven't been taught or don't know how to speak up and say, this is what I need. Or in my case, we go so far down the rabbit hole that we reach burnout and we actually don't have a choice because our physical and mental health have gone so low. So yeah, that decision factor.
Welcome to the Life Coaching for Mompreneurs podcast, where you will learn simple solutions to win at work without losing at home. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I'm your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business by elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl, to procrastinating on your goals and living in overwhelm. And it's time to say hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits so that you can achieve work-life harmony. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Life Coaching for Mompreneurs podcast. Let's do this. Well, hey friends, welcome back to the show. Cannot believe it's the last week in February already. January felt like a whole year, and then February has just zipped on by. But today we have another Turquoise Talk guest. So I want to tell you a little bit about her before we dive into the episode. Her name is Megan Caldwell, and she is on a mission to live her best life, most fun life, while empowering others to do the same in a culture that conditions women to value their self-worth based on productivity. How many of you believe that? People pleasing and perfectionism. As a transformational coach, engaging speaker, and epic facilitator, she inspires individuals like you to find their inner rock star. So Megan guides women on how to ditch overwhelm and exhaustion once and for all and live a life with deeper presence, more energy, and where fun and joy are no longer an afterthought. How many of you feel like that describes your life? I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. And what is fun? I don't even know what fun is anymore. So we talk about what is the inner rock star? What does that look like? Who is she? She's there. So we talk about that. We talk about some tips on how to overcome the overwhelm, perfectionism, people pleasing, how to say no. So we kind of get back into that topic a little bit that we talked about in November. But you are going to love her, love this conversation. And there's a really exciting thing that she announces that I'm going to be a part of as well. So make sure that you tune in to the very end. All right, friends. Y'all, get your earbuds, get your favorite beverage to sip on, and let's dive in. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a Turquoise Talk guest. Y'all know I love bringing on guests to talk about mompreneur life, entrepreneurship, being a woman in today's world, and all the roles that we play. So thank you so much, Megan, for coming on to talk to us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Martine, for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Yeah. So you and I just kind of started to get to know each other over the last, few weeks, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I would just love for you to share with the listeners a little about you, your family, and how you got into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, thank you. So a little bit about me and my family. So I am a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur. I hold a lot of hats. I love matcha lattes. I love chasing sunsets. I love rocking out to Pink. And I found myself into entrepreneurship just kind of by accident, which I think many of us do. I currently reside with my 3 school-aged children and my husband of almost 17 years just outside Portland, Oregon, originally from the East Coast, though. So we have made home here and love it so much. And so my first career was actually in education. I came straight out of undergrad. I went to a great school in Boston where a lot of my peers were going to law school and med school and other graduate programs. And I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And so when a program called Teach for America came across my plate, I said, ooh, that sounds prestigious. That's my next step. That's a hard thing to get into. Let me bust and see what I can do. So I went through the application process and I was selected and I became a core member in South Central Los Angeles, California. So I moved from Boston to LA knowing no one as a 22-year-old ready to save the world. And so I dove into the work of urban education. Get this, I was a high school special education math teacher. So you can put all those together. And it was truly there where I found my desire, my love, my passion, my calling for helping empower others. And so
Hmm.
in that space, it was these underserved youth,
Yeah.
helping them believe in themselves, helping them learn the basics of math. I also coach, so helping them come up with plays on the basketball court. And I never thought I was going to leave that world. I truly went
Mm.
there for a 2-year commitment, and I was like, I'm going to be here for forever.
Yeah.
About 5 or 6 years in, we had our first son, and those that are moms or parents know when you have a child, your perspectives and your priorities change. And
Yeah.
so, still being the achiever that I was, I decided to do a career change right amidst having my first kid, and
Hmm.
I climbed the ranks, if you will, and I joined one of my mentors at my graduate school alma mater to be full-time faculty. So then I was coaching and teaching teachers. I was like
Mm.
27 years old. I was a brand new mom and I was juggling all the things. And
Yeah.
from the outside, it sounded really good. A more flexible schedule, an increased salary. I could use my expertise in different ways. And I lasted less than a year in that position before I hit my first round of burnout. It showed up for
Hmm.
me as sleepless nights, as anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and really not being able to function in that role anymore.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we picked up ship, moved up here to the Oregon area to raise our family. We had no
Yeah.
place to live, no jobs. We lived with my in-laws for a little bit. That was a fun journey. And I really thought that my next step was what I had seen growing up, which was to stay home with my kids full time. My mom was
Hmm.
blessed to stay home with us full time. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. I want to be present with my children. And within 4 months, I bought my first business. I realized again, I was called to serve. And so I owned and operated a fitness franchise geared towards moms. And I was in that journey for close to 9 years. And it
Okay.
was in that space that was my first dip into entrepreneurship. So,
Hmm.
had my own business, had a team under me, lots of lovely things about that season of life, the community I built, the impact I
Hmm.
had. And I can remember distinctly, there was a week where I think 3 times in one week, clients came up to me following a class and said, Megan, how do you do this? Like, you have this
Mm.
thriving business, you're nationally recognized, you've got 3 beautiful children, you get to their soccer games and you get here, you've got a home, you've got a spouse. And I would literally smile and nod because on the outside, I had my
Mm.
shit
Yeah.
together. I had it
Yeah.
all. And on
Yeah.
the inside, I was slowly drowning. And so it was back in 2017, 2018, where my own personal wellness and personal development journey started. And that has
Hmm.
really led me into the work I do today, where I am so extremely passionate about helping other high achieving women. Most of my
Hmm.
client base are moms figure out this juggle of career and motherhood and life without sacrificing the things that are most important to you, without going down that hole of burnout,
Yeah.
choosing yourself without the mom guilt. And so
Yeah.
that's what brings me into my current space in entrepreneurship, which I feel so blessed to have found myself here. It took a while. And
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
you know in your journey, like once you find your space and you find your calling, it's just such fulfilling work.
Yeah. It really is. And what I heard in your story is kind of what I feel like there's probably a lot of listeners that feel this way where everything looks good on the outside,
Mm,
but you're struggling in silence. You're suffering in
yeah.
silence. And it's like no one knows because everyone just sees the highlight reel that you're posting on Instagram or on Facebook, or you have that I'm fine syndrome. I'm fine.
Right. Yep.
I'm
Yep.
fine. I'm
Things are
good. Everything's good.
good.
Right. And so, like, just to be able to, number one, if that is you, like, it's okay. There's no judgment here from either one of us. We both have been there. And I have a firm belief it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way because
Mm,
every day you live in burnout, every day you live in, overwhelm. It's just a day you can't get back. And none of
yeah.
you deserve to live that way. And if you have experienced burnout, as Megan and I both have, it's just not fun. It's really
Yeah.
not. But it's kind of been, I'm sure you've seen this too, where it's just accepted as that's just the way motherhood is.
Yep.
That's just the way
Yep.
being an entrepreneur is. Like we
Yep.
live in a constant state of burnout. And I think it's starting to shift a little bit, probably because of the work that you do and the work that I do. So we'll
Right, right,
we'll
right.
we'll
Props to
celebrate
us.
that, right? Yeah, yeah,
There's at least some conversation around it, but we still live in
yes,
this culture and society where, again, we are conditioned as women to kind of put our head down and grind through, right? And
mhm,
please
yeah,
others first.
yeah. And it really comes down to the decision. Like you made multiple decisions to change what your current reality was. I mean, you had a choice to stay in the burnout and stay in the job that was life sucking with, kids and this new season that you were coming into. And so I really just, I know you feel the same way, just empower people to decide differently. You know, you
Yeah.
don't have to stay where you are forever. You can decide and choose differently. You can decide that, well, what I used to do used to work for me, maybe it's not working for me now. I think we just kind of get in this like tunnel vision, like this is the way it was done by my mom, maybe, or
Right.
this is what I'm seeing my sister do, or like I'm seeing this best friend do it this way. And so just realizing you can change your mind anytime.
Yeah, and I think it's giving ourselves that permission
Mm-hmm.
to know that we can change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because change is really uncomfortable, even when we
Yeah.
know that change is what's needed or what is going to make
Mm-hmm.
us feel better or give us more of that sense of harmony, right? It doesn't mean that it's easy, but it starts with that decision. A coach that I've
Mm-hmm.
worked with says, life is just made up of a bunch of choices.
Yeah.
And it really is
Yeah.
like we get to choose how we
Mm-hmm.
show up. We get to choose our actions. We really only have control over our own being, which is our
Yeah.
physical body, but it's also our mental and emotional and
Yeah.
spiritual state. And I think, again, as you've shared, like far too often, we as women haven't been taught or don't know how to speak up and say, this is what
Yeah.
I need. Or in my case, we go so far down the rabbit hole that we reach burnout and we actually don't have a choice because our
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
and mental health have gone so low. So
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
decision
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah. Yeah. And you may not feel ready. You kind of touched on that. You know, I'm a firm believer that being ready is a decision that you make and not a feeling that you
Mm,
feel. You don't
yes,
feel ready to make a change like that, probably a career change, or you don't feel ready necessarily to maybe even become a mom or become an entrepreneur, but it's a
right.
decision that you make because you want those things on the other side of it. So if you're waiting to feel
Right.
ready to create the change, it's probably not coming.
We will just keep
You just,
waiting and waiting and waiting
that's
and waiting.
right.
And that's like one of the things I was going to say I love to call women out on. I don't know if I love to call them out on it, but like when the excuse or the story becomes it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when is going to be the right time? And when you
Yeah.
reflect that back, like there is no perfect time. There is no right time. It is when you are
Yeah.
willing to step in and do the work or say yes to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you do a lot of work as the transformation coach with defining what their inner rock star is. Can you kind of share, like helping them to find, bring her back, but maybe for someone listening, they're like, I don't even know, like, what does that mean? Like, who is my rock star? How do you define like your inner rock star?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think as I look back on how I've gotten into the work that I do and why I do and what I am helping women achieve and have really again made the choice to do in my own life is like how do we wake up every day feeling
Mm-hmm.
energized and feeling like a rock star, feeling ready to take on the world, having the energy, having the confidence, having the community.
Mm,
I think oftentimes, again, we have this perception of like the rock star needs to be big and bold and like they've got
yeah.
loud music and big dancers or like whatever it might be. And when I think of rock star, it's exactly as you phrased it, where it is this harmony between the inner and the outer, right? So we feel at peace and calm on the inside, confident, connected to ourself, so
Mm-hmm.
we can then best show up with our best self, with our strengths, with our rock star qualities on the
Yeah.
outside to then serve those around us. And so, yeah, I think inner rock star really comes down to knowing ourselves best, really being in tune with our most authentic self and being willing to show up that way. It's hard though, right? Because the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
pleaser in us, the perfectionists in us are saying, well, it should be done this way. Or what if they don't like that? And it's like, heck, if I like wearing sparkle in my hair, I'm gonna wear sparkle in my hair because that is
Yeah.
that is part of how I feel good, right? And so it's about
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
sense of feeling, confidence, energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think for so many women, it's been so long that they've even thought about that person that they were before life got its hands on them. And what I mean by that is just life circumstance. Like lifing is hard
Right.
sometimes. Adulting is hard. Being a mom is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. And so, when you think about yourself as a little kid, like you dreamt big. You didn't let anyone tell you you couldn't be anything that you wanted to be. You just allowed
Right.
yourself to dream big, and you showed up with zero filter. You said what you wanted
Mm,
to say. You asked for what you needed, and
yeah.
then like somewhere along the way, we've taught to just sit down, be quiet. right?
Yep.
And I think it's really for women that are listening, like you have that voice inside of you. She's there. We don't need a new you. We need the you that's already there to come alive
Right.
and to get
Right.
back in touch with that rock star woman that's in there. And so part of that comes from, and I know you talk about this, is the overwhelm, the people pleasing. Tell us a little bit about that. Like, how are you helping other women, or how do you work around getting overwhelmed? Because it's just such a huge, it's just an easy thing to fall into. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. I hear it all the time.
And then it becomes this cycle. Yeah.
Right,
It's like we
right.
get caught
Yeah.
on autopilot where it's like that then becomes the norm. And like, how do we get off the hamster
Hmm.
wheel if the wheel is just spinning so fast? Right.
Hey, friend, let's talk. It's time to book your clarity call. We are going to spend 1 full hour focused on you. A clarity call isn't about pressure. It's about possibilities. It's about you. You having a space to talk through what's on your heart and mind, you walking away with a clear vision and practical next steps, and you feeling confident in what's next and how to get there. You don't need to have it all figured out. That's my job. All you need to do is show up and we'll figure it out together. This is the best hour you can invest in yourself right now. Not in 6 months from now, not next month, right now. And don't just take my word for it. Here's what one of my coaching clients had to say after working together.
When I started coaching with Martine, I was extremely burned out, overwhelmed, very stressed, and I knew I needed to make some changes. So I reached out, and over the course of time, she helped me realize that I needed to take back control of my schedule, create boundaries. And then along the way, I had a huge transition in my business, and she helped me figure out my next steps and help me structure a new business. And she's been there for me and been able to help guide me with her advice and her knowledge. Without her, I could not be where I am today.
That transformation, it starts with one conversation. It's time to stop spinning your wheels and start making real progress. So head right now to martinewilliams.com or in the show notes and grab your private clarity call spot on my calendar before they're gone. And since I personally monitor my inbox, if you don't see a time slot that fits your calendar, just send me an email at martinewilliams.com with 3 times that do work, and I will make it work for you. All right, friend, let's get back to the show.
And so I think it comes back down to a lot of what we just talked about in terms of making the conscious choice, but we can't even make the choice until we are aware of it. And so I think one of like the most basic concepts I work on with women, but when it clicks and when they figure out how this works in their life, which is different than my life or your life, is how do we start to slow down a little bit? How do we start to create more margin and create more space? And so we then have that. And I'm not talking about like, you got to like block 2 hours every day to think about personal development work. No, I'm talking about like,
Right. Yeah.
how do we pause between work calls to just assess how am I doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Or what do I need as I transition from one space to another? And so
Yeah.
it's really what I like to think of is just I always say that awareness is that first step of change. And so we have to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to be aware. And, you know, I just heard from a client this morning, a realization she had. We are early in our work. She's working alongside a therapist as well. And she just kind of came to terms with some really deep inner learnings, such
Yeah.
as productivity is how she's defining her enoughness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the first time where that was brought to her awareness. And so we celebrated it. And I said, now that we're aware of this, now we
Yeah.
can start to shift. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
again, it's recognizing it, but it's also giving yourself permission to say, oh, I can do this differently. I'm
Mm-hmm.
worthy of trying something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do move so fast these days. And I do think that's part of we're just not aware before it's too late, right? We're not aware
Yeah.
how much of a state of burnout we're in or how overwhelmed or how overcommitted that we are. And, I like to say that, you had the power to create an overcommitted calendar. You also have the power to
Mm,
uncreate an overcommitted calendar.
yes.
So when we kind of blame like whoever, and we all can do that, but instead of
Right.
blaming, because when you blame, you give your power away. So
Right.
just own where you are. We're not judging or shaming. Just own where you are. the decisions that you made that led up to that, to where you are. And now you have the power to do something about it. But you're right. You have to be aware first. Sometimes we're just moving so fast, we
Yeah.
don't realize, oh, I'm not doing that great. Right.
Right.
Then when someone asks you, you're like, I'm fine. Moving on to the next thing, I'm fine. But when you really sit with it, you realize, okay, yeah, something's wrong
Yeah.
here.
And I think it's like allowing yourself to be aware of that resistance that we feel, where again, as we've already
Hmm.
said, like change is uncomfortable. So it's like starting to just like be aware of like when you respond in a certain way,
Hmm.
pick up the kids from their activities and they're like, "How's it going?" And you're like, "It's good." Meanwhile, you just picked up your mom from the hospital and you're got this going on, this big work project. Like we have pulled so far away from being able to show up authentically true, and I am really
Yeah.
working and have worked the last out of my own journey of like when somebody asks me how I am, if I am not good, I
Yeah.
say it. And it's interesting because the response often isn't like, "Oh my God, Megan can't get her crap together," right? It's like,
No. Yeah.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. Like, and then we can relate to one another and we can have conversation and connection
Hmm.
about some of the hard in life because it's not all
Hmm.
rainbows and butterflies. A lot of times people will say, "Megan, you're just always so cheery. Everything must be so good." And I'm like, no, a lot of this is a choice. I
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I process my grief and stress and all
Yeah.
those things in
Yeah.
healthy ways, but we get to choose. So
Yeah. Yeah. And the pause and really respecting that on both sides, So today I was out running some errands and I ran into someone that I haven't seen in a really long time. And she's like, "Oh, how's your business going?" I was telling her, and I could just tell in her eyes, just the pause of actually making eye contact with people.
yeah.
And, I'm like, "How are you doing?" And she kind of gave the blanket answer. And then I'm like, "How are you
How are
really
you
doing?"
really doing?
you
Yeah.
know, and you could tell like that meant a lot to her. I mean, we haven't seen each other in a
Yeah.
really long time, but I mean, people don't ask that next question because we're moving so
Yeah.
fast. And, she didn't give me all the details, but she definitely shared it's life's been lifing for
Yeah.
her, and I just wanted to let her know that I see her because I think so many of
Yeah.
us don't feel seen. We don't feel
Right.
heard. And a lot of that is our responsibility. We got to tell people when we're not okay
Right.
and ask for
Right.
what we need. But maybe you've tried that before. I was telling somebody the other day, maybe you kind of put your head out there and it's like whack-a-mole and someone came around and like told you to sit down and oh, it's okay, you're fine. And you try to put
Right.
it out there again, then you got whacked again. So it's finding that safe community, which I know you build community with your clients as well, to have that safe space for people to just be real. We got to be real. We
Yeah.
got to we got to take the masks off, and just let other women know, hey, I'm not okay.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point there is one, we have to be willing to put ourselves out there, even the
Hmm.
smallest step, right? When we talk about habit change or trying new things or making change, it's like, what is the smallest thing that I can do to
Hmm.
help shift the dial 1 degrees, right? But
Yeah.
this whole concept of community and connection and the saying like you are the 5 people that you spend the most time with. It's like
Yeah.
who are you spending your time with and are they authentic conversation or authentic
Mm.
connections where you can
Yeah.
actually get real. I would much
Hmm.
rather have a handful, 5 close people in my life where I can go to and say, "Hey, shit is real right now. Like I need a
Yeah.
hand,"
Yeah.
than 100 people that give praise
Yeah.
or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
I think it's being aware of that. And I think even like, you and I are in similar seasons of life where it's like recognizing that those relationships change over time. And so
Yeah.
just like some of those stories that served us or the ways of doing that served us at one season of our life is identifying and acknowledging sometimes the people shift too, and that's okay. That is part of growth and
Hmm.
part of change.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that comes up a lot, and I talk about it a lot on the podcast, is this idea of saying no and having,
Mm,
the ability to tell people no. And that helps with ditching the overwhelm is just flexing that courageous muscle and learning to say no. So what are some of the ways that you've been able to do that? Because it sounds someone's listening, they're like, I don't have a problem saying no. There are a lot of women who have a hard time saying no, whether it's from people pleasing or previous obligation, or they actually feel really important
mm.
and they wear that like Miss Dependable as like a badge of honor. And so that makes them feel good, which again, no judgment there, but saying yes to everything means you're saying no to probably some really important things. So what are some tips you have for someone who's listening who really struggles with just saying no?
Yeah, I think like we were just saying is like just start, just try it out. When I'm talking to my
Yeah.
clients about about making these changes, I always like to give the invitation to take it as a science experiment. Try it
Okay.
out
Yeah.
and then get
Hmm.
feedback as to how does it feel? How did it work for you? How did it serve you? What feelings came up when somebody gave you pushback on the boundary you just set? Okay, then
Hmm.
what's your response and how can we create separation there? So I think in terms of where to start in terms of saying no, it's again starting simple. It might be as I was going to say as silly as, but like again, I've got three kids who are school age where it's like saying no to our kids or
Yeah.
saying no to our school, like things that are there every
Yeah.
single day. It's uncomfortable. They're kids. Like we can get feedback. We know their response is not usually going to be good. Can I get the candy bar?
Right.
No. Mom,
No.
Dad, you're the worst, right? Like
Yeah.
the other thing that is coming to mind too is where are we saying no and where are we setting boundaries when it comes to our time? We all
Hmm.
have the same amount of hours in a week and in a day. And where can we start to again really take that pause to
Hmm.
identify, okay, Martine just like invited me out for a walk on Friday. I could probably squeeze it in between these and these. Like, is that walk with Martine really what serves me this week?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
then I can go back and respond versus react, right? So like inserting that pause allows us to really think about what is it that I need and what is it that I want right now. It's not that I don't want to go on a walk with Martine, but like it actually just doesn't fit and I can just be upfront and
Hmm.
honest. I recently was listening to something, I wish I could quote the book or the podcast, that basically, when we say no to the other person,
Hmm.
it's actually like creating more connection and authenticity because we are being honest with what we need versus,
Yeah.
yes, I can do
Yeah.
that, or yes, I'll show up to the party. And then it feels inauthentic because we're now doing something and we're resenting it, or
Yeah.
we really don't
Yeah.
have the time. And so we're stressing getting from one thing to the next. So I would say, like, again, start small. Like, with your kids if you have kids or smaller people, or even if you got a dog, like what does that feel like? And just like be in
Yeah.
tune with what this
Yeah.
practice looks like. And then also just being really starting to be really intentional with what we put on our calendar. I
Yeah.
think one thing that I personally have really evolved in over the last couple years is boundaries when it comes to clients and the work that I do. As an
Yeah. Hmm.
entrepreneur, when I was with the franchise, I was an entrepreneur. I was my own boss, but I still
Hmm.
put my head down and plowed through and led myself to a second round of burnout because that's what I was just used to doing. I would be responding to client texts at 10 p.m. and,
Yeah.
schlepping my kids off somewhere because I had to get somewhere. And it's like, what are my top priorities? And it's interesting because as I've set boundaries in terms of, I'm thinking specifically in terms of like response, like my clients know they can access me at certain times. And if you
Right.
message me after 6 p.m., you'll get a response from me the next day. Right. And
Right.
again,
Hmm.
it creates those clear boundaries when we do say no or hold up some of those
Yeah.
spaces.
It also gives another woman the freedom to do the same.
Yes. The ripple effect.
Yes, the ripple effect is so huge when they're like, oh, she actually said no. She said it politely. She wasn't a mean girl. Maybe I can do this too. Right. So
Yeah.
I think that there is an impact when you tell someone no, that you're actually going to give them the permission to do the same thing when they need to, even if it's just
Yes.
between you and her, right? Like she's not going
Yep.
to feel obligated to say yes to everything you ask her to do because she now knows you're a safe place to land. You're a safe person to tell no to because you just told her no. And so I just think
Yeah.
there, like you said, authenticity, being authentic, being just real with people. But you got to know what's important to you first before you can really honor your boundaries and your priorities. If you don't know what's important to you can't expect other people to
Right.
value what's important to you. So,
Totally. Totally.
that's all part of the slowdown, right? Slowing down and really figuring out what matters most to me right now. What matters most to me is different than it when my kids were little. Mine are
Right.
17 and 20 now. So I
Right.
mean, they don't really want to spend as much time with me. I'm pretty sad about that. But,
Right.
so my priorities have shifted. And so what I might have said no to 10 years ago, I'm able to say yes to now. So it's
Yeah.
just thinking about it in that way too. But you got to know what matters to you before you can set those boundaries and really honor your priorities. Because that's really all you're doing when you're saying no. You're not trying to be mean. You're just trying to honor what's important to you and your family.
Yeah, and I like how you shared like it's like building up this practice. It's building up the muscle of saying
Hmm.
no, right? And I like to use the analogy where like every time you say no or every time you say yes to yourself, which sometimes involves
Yeah.
saying no, we're dropping that piggy bank into our own self-love, into our own
Hmm.
self-confidence, into our own
Yeah.
like truly knowing ourselves and like cheering ourselves on. And it takes practice
Yeah.
and it's going to be uncomfortable. but be willing to lean in because as you shared it, then this whole concept of like when we show up most authentically, it will be that ripple and it gives other people
Hmm.
permission to step into their power as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. And I want you to tell everyone what you've been working on that you're so excited about and this opportunity and this event that's coming up. I'm super excited to be a part of it. So I'm going to let you kind of talk about it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So this is how Martine and I were connected. I have an amazing, super excited. It's coming up real quick. Online virtual event called the Rockstar Mom. And it is bringing together 20 plus speakers and thought leaders who are really passionate about helping high achievers figure out this
Hmm.
juggle better. I don't like to use the
Hmm.
word balance. In fact, I truthfully feel that balance is BS. But how do we move away from the overwhelm and the exhaustion and the constantly being on the go, go, go and move into a space of truly living lives where we feel like our inner rock star, where we are able to show up fully, where we are able to continue to work hard in our careers or in our businesses, but also be able to slow down and be present with those that we love.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had the opportunity to speak with many, many amazing speakers, including yourself. I know we had such a rich conversation.
Yes.
I've got speakers kind of across the board that really tackle helping women who are on that verge of burnout. Like, how do we take
Hmm.
care of ourselves, mind, body, and soul holistically? So I've got a couple doctors come on. I just did an interview this morning. We talked a lot about the role of stress in hormones and gut health.
Yeah.
We talk about
Yeah.
nervous system regulation. We talk about habit building and time management, lots of different pieces, but a fun free event to come together. And I think a big piece of it is to know we're not alone, right? Like to know
Yeah.
that there are other
Yeah.
people, other resources, other people that are having the same challenges that we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like on the outside, like you said it earlier, people are like, how do you do all the things you're doing? Or how are you always so positive? And it's like, we have our moments too. We
Oh,
struggle
yeah.
too. Right. And so I think it's really powerful to have an event like this where you have multiple speakers from multiple backgrounds. Number one, sharing their story, because
Yes.
stories are what make us so connected. You're like, oh, she gets me, right? Oh, I've been through
Right.
that. Or I know someone who's been through that. And then to be able to provide some like actionable steps for people to take when they leave. I just think it's a really powerful event, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. And I'm just excited for you and the impact that it's going to have and all of the speakers that are going to be on there. I'm just really, really excited for it. So tell everyone where they can find that information.
Yeah. So if you just go to the rockstarmomevent.com,
Okay.
that's the space where you can opt into the event. And we'll get you all of the information about how to access all of those amazing interviews, as well as speakers are also providing free, true value add gifts for our participants. Lots of different cool stuff in that space. Again, not to overwhelm. You can take as much or as little as you want from the event, but I can
Right.
almost
Yeah.
guarantee that anybody who shows up to this event is going to walk away with at least a couple golden nuggets of those next actionable items that they can
Yeah.
take that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then where can they connect with you personally? Like, are you on Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places, website? Like, give us
Yeah,
all the goods.
all the places you can find me on Instagram, Megan Caldwell PDX, same website link, Megan Caldwell Coaching on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm kind of across all the places. I love conversations like this. I love connecting with other
Yeah.
individuals. So if anybody feels inspired to reach out, please do.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, I think that you and I, we get into the work that we do because of our own personal
Hmm.
journeys, but then it is just such a blessing to be able to connect with other individuals who are on their own self and personal development journey, knowing that we
Yeah.
can continue to make shifts forward. And I truly believe that when we, especially as women, truly learn how to prioritize our own health and well-being first, we then have such a greater impact and power to change our world for the better.
Yeah. It's so true. So true. Well, we'll put the links to everything in the show notes for people to grab it really quickly and to connect with you as well. I would love just what's a final thought? If you could empower all of the mompreneurs of the world today, what is something you would like to leave them with?
I think it comes back to kind of looping back to the start of our conversation is just start. Give yourself permission.
Mm,
Make that choice to try something different, to say yes to
Mhm.
yourself, or to say no to something that is no longer serving you, but to really just think about what is the smallest action that you can take right now that is going to lead you even just one step closer into the direction that you are wishing to move.
Baby steps. I love that.
That's
We
it.
overcomplicate things sometimes way too much.
Keep it simple and just take that one first step. And before you know it, you're going to be running in the direction that you are wanting to go.
I love that. I love that. Well, we could have talked for another hour or two because we get each other.
Yep. This has been so fun, though.
It's been so great. So great. Y'all make sure you go to the show notes, sign up for the summit, register for it. There's amazing speakers, including myself and Megan on there. So be sure to go and do that. And we will see you all very soon. And I will catch y'all on the next episode. Thanks again, Megan.
Thanks, Martine.
Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.